Unspoken Issues.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues Podcast. We have come back round for a round robin. That's right.
Ooh.
Round robin.
Talking about my need to exercise, which I thought was a little unkind. That's not inaccurate.
Wordplay worthy of Al Milgrom.
That is one of my notes for sure.
You got it, punny bunny.
Oh my goodness. It's there are cringe moments in comics, and I experienced quite a few. Not that was horrible. I'm just saying there were moments that I was cringing. Round Robin, which I think I own 4 of these 6 issues, and I've never read the whole saga. So this is my first opportunity to jump into Amazing Spider-Man number 353, 354, 355, 356, 357, and 358. The 6-part round robin sidekicks revenge storyline. Over here is Evan Bevins. Evan, how you doing this evening?
I am doing all right, Jesse.
All right. And there is Chris Armstrong right down there. Are you ready to talk some Amazing Spider-Man?
Oh, yeah.
Which one of you came up with this one? Was it Chris or Evan?
I can't take credit. It was Mr. Armstrong.
All right, then. Okay. So, I mean, hey, like I said, I've never read it, so I was down for reading it. Any reason why this stuck out to you, Chris?
As soon as we decided a couple years ago to start doing longer storylines, this was on the short list for me. And this came out right as I was getting into comics. The first Amazing Spider-Man issue I ever had was it's actually worth a little bit now, I think, because I think it was the first appearance of Cletus Cassidy. It's a Rhino story that I think maybe also was the first appearance of Cardiac.
Okay.
So it was an Eric Larson issue. And then I got a few other Spider-Man issues. By the time this rolled around, Darkhawk's right there on the cover. That series is going. I'm already a huge Darkhawk fan.
What more did you need?
Yeah, and I didn't even need the Punisher, but he was there as well. So yeah, I got this, and this was one of the first multi-part stories I ever read. Once I got into comics, I read these 6 issues over and over as a kid. I was without these comics for over a decade probably, until I found one of the few 90s era trade paperbacks that Marvel put out. They put out a trade of this, and I found it at Wizard World or something in a $5 trade bin. Able to reread it again. I was like, wow, this is some really cheesy dialogue in it, but I still love it.
So this is about the closing parts of 1991. I'm collecting at this point, so I'm kind of surprised that I didn't pick these issues up. This is Mark Bagley, though, that's doing Amazing Spider-Man. When was Larson doing it? Was that before Bagley? It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the 2 previous issues before this were the first 2 that Bagley did, which also guest starred Nova, where they fought a tri-signal.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that issue. I know that cover.
Speaking of comics we have but haven't read.
Mm-hmm.
Those are cool too. I had those as a kid, so I may have already been like an avid, like I said, I didn't get every issue from that first issue I got, but I got several. By the time this storyline happened, I pretty much stayed on Amazing until I stopped reading comics for a while in the mid 90s.
Okay.
But yeah, Bagley took over, I think, on issue 351, maybe, because I think 350 was Eric Larson's last issue. It was a big Dr. Doom story.
Okay. So this is early Bagley on Amazing, which is pretty interesting. Okay.
He had been doing New Warriors at this time, so he was pretty familiar with, Night Thrasher and Nova doing that book.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So, Evan, in 1991, what were you picking up at that point?
That 91, that was pre-Executioner's Song. I was probably just grabbing about anything that caught my attention. I should have looked up what was going on back then. I was getting Spider-Man, but not too consistently. I'd grab an Amazing here, a Web of there. I know I was grabbing, this might have been right before I started collecting Darkhawk. I collected Darkhawk when the Russian super team invaded his high school.
A little over a year after this.
Yeah, so Sleepwalker was probably a little sooner. The Kroger where my stepdad worked was carrying one comic and one comic only, and it was What If. Still don't understand how that happened.
Just one comic.
What If every month. Fantastic Four, was probably reading Fantastic Four at that point. I just found out the comic shop that I frequented in college was closing, and it wasn't until then that I learned when New Comic Book Day was. I just looked around and grabbed things that got my attention. Probably Ninja Turtle Adventures, maybe. It was before I dove into X-Men and before I was a super consistent collector, but I was always buying comics.
Now, this is also right before the Image boom the following year. Actually, when this story ends, it's about 4 or 5 months later, Image Comics hits the ground running. I can remember picking up Amazing Spider-Man when McFarlane was doing it. I think I've got a couple of the Eric Larson issues, but I don't remember picking these issues up off the shelf. I was most likely picking up Punisher in the early 90s, or Wolverine, possibly an X-book. I was definitely gravitating towards the mutants at this point. So let me get into the creative team here. This was released, it was 2 issues every month starting September 10th of 1991 to November 26th of 1991. We got 6 issues to cover the round robin of Sidekick's revenge. Our writer here is Al Milgrom. If you guys will just sit back for a few moments. I took every book that Mike's Amazing World of Comics has listed Al Milgrom as some type of creator, inker, writer, a combination of both, whatever. And I took all that and threw it into ChatGPT, and I said, okay, give me a snapshot. Tell me what you see here about Al Milgrom's career, and I want to give you some of the highlights here. Maybe. Okay, here we go. Primarily known as an inker, he served as an inker on 868. It says issues. We'll call that stories, because there are definitely some duplicates, especially when you start talking about some of the Archie stuff. Like, he'll get 3 credits on an Archie book because there's 3 stories that he did in there. But primarily known as an inker, he served as an inker on 868 issues. He also worked as a penciler. It says 146 issues here, but again, the spreadsheet or the data has him listed as doing dual roles at one point, like writer, penciler, writer, artist, writer, inker. Some of those may not have been counted. He occasionally took on multiple duties. He worked with many publishers, Marvel Comics being the majority of his work, 773 credits there. Archie Comics, he has 233 credits. Other publishers include DC Comics. He's only got 77, so he's definitely a Marvel guy when he's doing 10 times the work at Marvel compared to DC. He also did some stuff with Warren Comics, Atlas, Star, Peter Pan, and Image Comics. He has a career that started, according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, in 1973. One of the last issues credited on there, which is most likely not updated, was 2023. So that's 50 years worth of work. Yeah, dude. But the thing is, it took me by surprise. And again, I want to reiterate, 868 stories inking. Okay, so this guy is an inker. It's not very common that he is coming out and writing. So this story is actually one of the few longer runs of stories that he did writing. The first one being 12-issue series, and I need to know if either one of you read any of this. US 1.
I did not, but I've heard about it. I mean, I've seen issues of it. You know, I loved trucks as a kid, although part of me feels like the apex of trucker comics was when Power Man and Iron Fist went undercover as long-haul truckers in issue 85. So I'm just not sure that can be topped.
Well, I mean, this looks like a truck out. This is a semi-truck out in space, though, isn't it? Like, I feel like US 1 is a space trucker. I'd have to look this up just to make sure. But
I mean, US 1 is clearly a US route. So did they have American roads in space in the 80s?
I feel like the guy is a trucker. I don't know if that was his name, but I feel like he showed up in some comics recently, and I can't remember who was using him as a joke. I feel like it's something you and I did, Evan. Like, we were looking at something, and this guy showed up and was helping transport somebody across space. And I was like, who is this guy? And it's US 1. Anyway,
I think so.
I'd have to look it up just to be sure. But anyway, US 1, a comic about a trucker and possibly in space. We're going to put possibly on there because I never read it either. But I just remember seeing the big semi truck floating out in space. Okay. Also, you'll find his name a lot on X Factor, West Coast Avengers, Mighty Thor, Thunderstrike.
Heck yeah.
Captain America. Yeah. Captain America and Captain Marvel. His prolific work, like I said, 50-year career. As far as his contributions go, the most he did per decade was in the 90s. So you pick up a 90s comic, I think it was like 360 contributions in the 90s. That's lot.
That's when the most work was available. So
yeah, that's true. Right. That's true. He's not really known for writing comics. He's known for inking.
But Jesse, he also did some penciling.
He did do some penciling.
One of the most famous Spider-Man stories of all Secret Wars 2, number 2, where Spider-Man teaches the Beyonder how to use the bathroom.
Oh, my goodness. I knew it.
It was the trifecta of Secret Wars 2, number 2. Well, we don't confirm what the Beyonder did. They were tasteful. But, yeah, that was a big moment.
That was. All right.
We can remember when that one dropped.
Oh, look out. Look out. The rest of the creative team here: pencils, Mark Bagley; inking, Randy Emberlin; lettered by Joe Rosen; colored by Bob Sharon; editor, Danny Fingeroth. And that creative team stays the same throughout all 6 issues. So we got a nice, consistent creative team. I've got the synopsis ready to go. Is there anything before I get into that you guys want to discuss, that you have burning desires to talk about here before I jump into that?
I am kind of curious how he got this assignment. Like, it's a bi-weekly run. They're wanting to squeeze 6 issues into 3 months for whatever reason. I don't know if they're trying to get to a certain issue number by a certain time. I think they may have done bi-weekly stints every year, for certain comics. That seemed to be something that happened periodically back in the 90s. But either way, he's not super prolific as a writer, but he's doing this, and he's not the main writer of Amazing Spider-Man.
Michelini was the writer before and after.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm wondering if, I've read this story countless times, and it's about Moon Knight's former sidekick who he thought had been killed in a battle previously. I always assumed that happened in the 80s. But it only happened like a year before this story.
Oh, really?
I was looking into the history of the Moon Knight story where Midnight was nearly killed. I've seen the cover a lot because Rob Liefeld did one of the covers. It was like a 3-part Moon Knight story in 1990, and it was a guest starred Spider-Man and the Punisher, but
not Wolverine.
Right.
It says on the cover, Wolverine does not appear in this comic.
Is that the Rob Liefeld cover?
Yes. Danny Fingeroth was the editor on that one too, and he's got some connections to some of the other characters that appear in here.
Yeah, he was the writer on Darkhawk for the whole run. And Tom DeFalco is the creator of Darkhawk, who was I think EIC at the time, editor-in-chief at Marvel at the time.
I'm not sure.
I just saw his name. Who wrote that Moon Knight issue? Because I got to check that.
That was Chuck Dixon.
Okay.
But yeah, I was looking up, and some of the other characters, it looks like Fingeroth was the connective tissue on all of them, whether it was writing or editing. I kind of made up in my head. It's not as good as my completely made up story about how Bobby Brown wrote that song for Ghostbusters. But I just figured they're like, hey, we're going bi-weekly. We need somebody to give Dave a break. Hey, Al, why don't you do something with these characters? Why don't you tie up these threads for me? Yeah, that could very well have been what it was. It's weird that they are picking up this Moon Knight story from a year earlier with a different creative team and everything. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
Oh,
as like a preamble.
I was just taking a look here to see what he had written prior to this. Milgrom writes a story in Fantastic Four Annual 24 in April 91, and then he hadn't written anything for 3 years. He did a small stint on Marvel Comics Presents in 88, leading up to that Fantastic Four Annual. On Marvel Comics Presents 1, 2, 3, and 4, it looks like he wrote a story for the Silver Surfer, Captain America, Thing, and Thor. So he was kind of, yeah, my guess is you're probably right. They're just like, hey, you want to write something? I wonder if this is something he's had in his back pocket. But man, Milgrom gets to play with some of the hottest characters at this time, which is actually pretty interesting. He gets to take these characters and puts together this whole story. It's like Moon Knight had a creative team change just like maybe 5 issues after that storyline wrapped up. So maybe that's why they didn't follow up on it. Dixon looks like his last issue was 24. So it was only 3 issues later. Maybe Fingeroth said, hey, there's a dangling plot thread here that you can do something with. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into our first 3 issues here. I've got a small summary for each issue, and then we'll jump into our notes for the issues. In Amazing Spider-Man number 353, we are introduced to Midnight, revealed to be Jeff Wild, the former sidekick of Moon Knight, now rebuilt as a cybernetic enforcer for the Secret Empire. After brutally dispatching opponents in a test of loyalty, Midnight is assigned to break physicist Elliot Franklin, the villain known as Thunderball, out of custody. His mission leads to a chaos at a police precinct where Chris Powell, aka Darkhawk, transforms to stop him. Spider-Man joins the fray, recognizing the threat Midnight poses, and together they narrowly prevent an even greater disaster. In the melee, Midnight escapes with Franklin, hinting at a larger, more sinister plan by the Secret Empire. In Amazing Spider-Man number 354, Spider-Man and Darkhawk manage to avert a deadly hover platform crash, strengthening their uneasy alliance. Meanwhile, the Secret Empire pressures Franklin to help enhance more superhumans, with Midnight angling for greater power and influence. Spider-Man reaches out to Moon Knight for help, revealing that Midnight is alive and transformed. Midnight targets Nova, hoping to recruit him to the Empire, but Spider-Man, Night Thrasher, and Moon Knight intervene. This battle turns desperate when Midnight unleashes an electric attack on Nova and escapes with him, deepening the heroes' concern and uniting them against the growing threat. In the following issue, 355 of Amazing Spider-Man, the team of Spider-Man, Moon Knight, Night Thrasher, and now the Punisher pursue Midnight to a Secret Empire stronghold. Their assault is interrupted by the Seekers, high-tech mercenaries who stall the heroes long enough for Midnight to deliver Nova to the Empire's hands. As Nova remains captive, tensions rise among the heroes, especially with Punisher gravely wounded. I say gravely. He got his, what happened there? He got like some kind of power siphoning device hooked to him, and he's down for the count for a little bit. Enough to
drained a lot of his surliness.
Enough to put him in a sleeping state in order to moan aloud his origin story. Meanwhile, Midnight, growing increasingly unstable and bitter over his treatment, learns he is still being controlled by the Secret Empire through a pain inducer wired into his spine. Nurse Lynn Church, secretly sympathetic, conspires to implant a hidden device in Midnight's body, hinting at a coming betrayal or liberation. Ends up being a liberation. So we discover in these first 3 issues, Midnight sees himself as abandoned by Moon Knight and now struggles between serving the Empire and seizing his own destiny. Spider-Man and Darkhawk grapple with the responsibilities of heroism, while Punisher's brutal methods contrast starkly with theirs. As the Secret Empire tightens its hold and prepares for larger battles, the heroes realize they are up against not just a physical threat, but a well-organized machine intent on reshaping the future of superpowered warfare. So there we go. We have our first 3 issues in the bag. I've heard of the Secret Empire, but I didn't know what they were. To those listening who may not know who the Secret Empire is, I want to read some bits of info I grabbed from the Marvel Wiki.
A bunch of guys who fight over who has to be called number 2.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Secret Empire, secret criminal organization, often portrayed as a subgroup or splinter faction of larger evil organizations like Hydra. They operate with a strict numbered hierarchy where members use code names instead of real identities. Their goal is to destabilize governments, spread corruption, and ultimately take over America from within. They were originally introduced in the 1960s in Captain America comics and have been enemies to many Marvel heroes, especially Captain America. The group often uses advanced technology, mind control, political subversion, and cybernetics to achieve their ends. Now, leading up to Round Robin, they are shifting their focus to biological and cybernetic enhancements. They're no longer just working behind the scenes. They're trying to create an army of cybernetic super soldiers, starting with Jeff Wild. They rebuild Jeff after he was critically injured, turning him into a cybernetic enforcer. They recruit Thunderball to help mass produce these enhancements and even start targeting young heroes like Nova for conversion. Their hierarchy is fragile, though, because they've lost number 1. And there's power struggles within the Secret Empire, with number 7 currently at this point trying to seize control. And of course, Midnight thinking that he might make a play as well. So I think that's where I want to stop in regards to that.
Tragic loss of his lips.
Yes. At first, he takes the hood off, and I'm like, hey, Hank Henshaw, wait a second. Oh, no, it's not Hank. Wait a second. This is a Marvel comic. What am I thinking? What do you guys think about Midnight here? I'll start with you, Chris. What did you think of Midnight when you were first reading this?
I thought he was, of course, at the time, I didn't know who he was. I don't think many people were probably reading Moon Knight. So.
I didn't even know this guy existed until I read this comic.
Yeah, he's just sort of, I don't want to say generic, because the industry didn't become lousy with cyborgs until probably a year or 2 after this. So he was still a little bit novel, a former superhero who's, been cybernetically enhanced and stuff. It's cool as the story goes on, his power set evolves as they keep adding stuff to him.
Right.
But he's fairly one note in that, he's sort of been driven crazy. It seems, I mean, he may have been crazy in Moon Knight. Because I haven't ever read those, but it seemed like he's been driven crazy by the accidents that happened, and now he's power hungry and a little unstable. It seems like Milgrom made this comparison in another book we covered at some point in the past, where it seems like Milgrom is just getting all the action figures out and playing with all these different characters, and it just giving them an excuse. The Secret Empire, I didn't know much about them. This story is my only real point of reference for them. I know they've popped up in other stories here and there, but it's pretty rare. Midnight is sort of the central focus as far as the villains and stuff. He gets the job done. There's a moment in this first issue where Spider-Man takes off the mask and he's revealed, and they're shocked. And that would have been way more effective if the reader had not seen what he looks like with the mask. And I mean, you see that on the first or the second page.
Right.
It's the third page when you first see him with his cyborg face and stuff.
But I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have recognized him. One of the things I never read before now, but I remember seeing and hearing about it. And the thing that always jumped out to me was the title and the subtitle, Round Robin, the Sidekick's Revenge. And I noticed that there's no villain on any of the covers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
It's all team up covers, pretty much.
Yeah, which, I mean, honestly, what's going to get you to buy the issue? But that was one thing I always thought was interesting about it, was the obvious tweak to DC. And then, but what sidekick? Spider-Man, he has a sidekick now. That book's more entertaining than it should be.
I like Spider-Boy.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I was like, none of those guys even have sidekicks, do they? I mean, I didn't know about Midnight, and there's always all the jokes about Batman endangering children, and Moon Knight's presented a lot more level-headed here, but, with Moon Knight's resume over the years, is he the guy you want training a kid, an adult, a dog, anyone?
He seems more stable in this storyline than in anything else.
He does, yes, absolutely.
Why is the story called Round Robin?
It's just a play on Robin as the sidekick, Batman's sidekick.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense.
Sidekick.
Makes sense when I look at it that way.
Yeah. They do kind of shuffle opponents all throughout, but I always just thought it was a reference to Robin.
I'm sitting here thinking of sports. And what a round robin is. And I'm like, how does this play into this? I'm doing mental gymnastics to try and make it work.
That subtitle is very important.
Yeah.
I think they were also doing mental gymnastics to try and find a way to work Robin into the title of the story.
Right.
They're like, round robin, that's a phrase. Let's use that.
We'll use it. Sidekick. Oh, they'll get it.
And we're sure going to make a lot of hay of the dialogue in some of these.
Oh, yeah.
I will say I still stand by this as a really fun story that Milgrom did a good job of making like the Saturday morning cartoon equivalent of a blockbuster movie, of just like a lot of action and, fun superheroics and characters interacting with each other and stuff. I don't think Milgrom does a bad job here outside of some of the pretty cringy dialogue moments here and there.
Yeah. I mean,
what I think is interesting about it is, aside from the fact that at this point it was rare to have a numbered storyline, when I saw a cover with part something out of something, I was like, oh, this is big.
That's big.
Where now it's like, Bruce Banner washes the dishes, part 1 of 3. Read the trade soon. One thing that I think is neat is a lot of times we get these stories with wheels within wheels, and the villain has thought 17 steps ahead, and by observing the way Moon Knight drinks a Mountain Dew, he knows exactly how he'll punch and how he'll throw, and they know all this stuff in advance. And I don't think anybody's plan works, hero, villain, anybody, in this story. Which is actually super relatable. I don't say that critically. Like, I don't think they were just like, I don't know what we're doing, let's just get to the punching. I think he had to know it was just this comedy of errors and mistakes. And I mean, I think it's Franklin Thunderball was like, oh, you guys know what you really need to do is recruit heroes, because those guys always win. So like, yeah, sure, let's get one of those new warrior kids. And And, the guy's like, hey, Nova, why don't you come back and hang out with the Secret Empire? They're a bunch of cool dudes. And Nova's like, yeah, okay, I'll go. And he's thinking to himself, I'm just going to bust these guys. And yet he still gets captured. And Spider-Man and Night Thrasher, everybody's tripping all over each other trying to save him. And it's this rolling blooper reel across the city.
That was one of my notes here. I thought it was funny that they were going after Nova, how that was all handled. I'll throw out the rest of my notes real quick, just quick hits here. And I apologize if I'm taking any of your talking points. So feel free to jump in if I'm taking one and start talking. All right. Out of all 3 issues, Spidey and Darkhawk version of a fastball special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good one. Yeah.
I don't think we can call it a fastball special. It took a long time.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't have time to web that. Well, what should we do? Why don't you lift me up and kind of angle me that way? I mean, I don't care.
This diagram.
You have to have lengthy dialogue in the split second. But I was just looking at it. I'm like, I bet he could have just webbed it. But the Darkhawk Spider-Man curveball special or whatever was much cooler.
Curveball. And how is Moon Knight's thing a helicopter?
I was going to see if anybody had any theories on that. I've never understood how that's a copter.
I think it has rotors in the wings.
That's where I was like, maybe if there's rotors in the wings.
I don't know if you understand much about aerodynamics and engineering, but have you ever tried to design a helicopter shaped like a moon? It's really hard.
All right. I threw this one in here, Evan, because it made me think of you, because Moon Knight was really close to a water tower for a few minutes.
Yes. I saw that and I'm like, man, Moon Knight has such bad luck with water towers. I really would have appreciated if there had been a moment where he just froze up and they're like, dude, what's going on?
It's got trauma.
Yeah, that might have been one of his other personalities,
That was true.
Stephen Grant, who knows?
Everyone gets to tell their origin stories. So that's nice. We got new people. We want to learn who they are. And then my last question I'll throw out to you guys. What were you guys thinking about Lynn Church? And then we're only 3 issues in, so I know we're going to get the reveal in the next 3. But I know when I was reading this, I was like, what is her deal? She walks around. Everybody can see her face already. But it seems like every time she would corner somebody, they'd be like, that face. I don't think she was taking anything off as far as I could tell.
You're married, Jesse. You've seen a woman's face change.
I have. She means business. I see now.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I was like, okay, yeah. The Secret Empire, they spent all their budget hiring mercenaries and having voice modulators for their numbered costumes. They couldn't hire a nurse, so they had to kidnap one.
Right.
Apparently there were no vets who flunked out of veterinary school, and now work as mafia doctors available.
Fair.
Or is there more to it than that?
Could be. So yeah, I was
just to be kind of a sympathetic, like she felt bad for Jeff. She's supposed to be a victim herself in some ways, but we don't see her going behind the scenes until the end of this 3rd issue.
Right.
So with half the story, we're seeing her as somebody Jeff clearly got a crush on and who feels bad for him. And then as the story progresses after the 3rd, in the second half, we see more of like her
actual arc.
Things, behind the scenes and stuff.
Come on, who amongst us hasn't mistaken, an attractive woman being polite for something more, right? Right?
Never.
I'm not throwing stones.
And that's even without massive cybernetic modifications,
Chris, I'll give you the floor here. You got any other notes for these first 3?
Obviously, we get some Darkhawk action here in these first couple issues. And the first issue, kind of like you said, pretty much every guest star gets a page to just kind of show their origin and their backstory, including Chris Powell and Darkhawk here. And there's even like, he goes to this police station and he talks to Officer Zavar, who is a character from the Darkhawk comic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like really connecting you to the stories in his book. I guess part of the reason they're doing all these guest stars is to like convince kids, hey, check out Darkhawk's book, check out the new Warriors comic, check out what Moon Knight's got going on or whatever.
That makes sense.
Yeah, to try and spread some of Spider-Man's popularity around a little.
Yeah,
I like Bagley's version of Punisher's skull. He's got more of like the angular skull. This was probably the first story I ever read with the Punisher, so I've always kind of liked that version of that design.
Nice.
It's always cool to see Bagley's Captain America. He shows up for a brief cameo. I wonder why he didn't get more involved in the action. I guess he was popular enough that they didn't have to worry about that with him.
Milgram's probably like, I have to get another one. Okay, I got dialogue for this guy too.
Yeah. I did notice when I was going through and reading, I read these on Marvel Unlimited, and I noticed the cover to part 2, which would have been what, issue 354. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, that Spider-Man has a real like Larson vibe to it. That's cool. And then I looked and I saw Eric Larson was the inker on this cover.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't see that.
Kind of cool. And then I think Klaus Janson did one of the other covers. I didn't check on all of it.
Yeah. These covers are something to behold. I mean, it is like, hey guys, here's everything. Oh, and this too. It's like they can't fit everything on the cover sometimes because there's so much going on.
And on the third, on part 3, Spider-Man's kind of pushed to the background. You're like, hey, whose magazine is this anyway? Every issue has at least 3 guest stars. Is the third part? Yeah, that's when the Seekers show up. I feel like I've seen these guys in comics since then, but only from the 90s. I don't think I've seen them in modern day, really. But they were they had appeared, I guess, in Fantastic Four. They referenced that.
They did show up in Iron Man as well. They referenced an issue of Fantastic Four.
I really like, they're called Sonic, Grasp, and Chain. They all have their own distinct look, different colors and everything. But I really like Grasp, who basically just has these big gauntlets that he can do different things with. Like one of them he uses to trap and squeeze Night Thrasher. There's another shot of him shooting a giant armored hand at Spider-Man and almost knocking him out. Mm-hmm. I kind of like those guys, and I wish they would show up more often.
It looks like their last appearance was in Fantastic Four 342, which I should have bought, but was one of the issues I missed. However, that issue was written by Danny Fingeroth.
Hey.
Yeah, he kind of ties all this stuff together.
Yeah, those guys just show up for like a cup of coffee in that issue. It's like, hey guys, and they legit like fight them for a couple seconds. They're like, we're just here to stall you. See you later, and they leave.
Long enough for them to launch the water tower.
The Secret Empire. I mean, these guys, they've got bases all over the city.
Yes,
they're huge complexes. They've got giant freaking aircraft carrier size spaceships, basically. I mean, you can't really tell how big that ship is, but it looks huge.
Yeah.
What's going on with these guys?
No kidding.
They have a lot more power than they're letting on.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep it a secret.
Clearly. Yeah. I really liked Night Thrasher pulling a Wolverine with the Snicked. And having a blade coming down that he uses to free Frank.
Oh, yeah, that took a turn. Like, for a second, he's like, how about I just end you right now? And you're like, okay.
I'll put you out of your misery.
Wow.
A lot of the lettering is cool. Like, as far as the sound effects and stuff, they all look kind of hand-drawn. And a lot of them is that thing where the lettering or the sound effects are part of the action. They do that a lot. I don't know if that's something Bagley was doing or the letterer did all that stuff, but a lot of that sound effect stuff looks really cool.
Yeah, it's great that you point that out because one of my panels is strictly because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It's done to tremendous effect throughout these comics. So, yeah, I appreciate that as well.
And in the first part, it looks like there may be a Bagley self-portrait in there when they go to the news station, to the Bugle. Mm-hmm. I guess that's in the second part. I'm kind of scanning through here. And you see MJ and Peter walking through the newsroom. There's a guy with glasses and a mustache leaning over one of the cubicles. That just looks like what Bagley looked like then. I don't know if that may be Ben Urich for all I know. Although I don't think that's what Urich looked like.
I don't think Ben could pull off that mustache.
That's all I got for the first 3 issues, I think.
All right. Evan?
Jesse, there was a moment that I thought of you when we learned that Aunt May is a big wrestling fan.
Dude, that's my first panel because she goes through and she mentions the wrestlers. The panel is her excited because wrestling is on. And according to her, she's watching the Incredible Hunk wrestle Pierre the Mammoth and Andre the Giant. Okay, so both of them are French. We'll put it that way because Andre was definitely a Frenchman. He was from France. This came out in 91 and WrestleMania 3 happened in 87. So 4 years later, look, he passed away in 93. So he is actually really on a downturn. His back was getting really bad. And I don't think he was wrestling very much. But yeah, he passed away January of 1993. So it was about a year and a half after this was published. So you wouldn't have seen Andre the Giant too much on TV. He was still kind of around, but glad you thought of me, Evan, because that was my first panel and you were right on the money.
I kind of wondered why nobody else picked up on this. Whenever Aunt May was like, "Oh, Peter, you have to leave again." He's like, "Yeah, but Raw is on." That was the easiest I've ever seen Peter ditch Aunt May.
He was out.
He's focused.
Yeah. In the second issue, we had our first rather suggestive panels, which if I was reading this when I was 11, I probably wouldn't have thought much of it. It's when Midnight goes flying by their apartment and Peter's spider sense picks up the tracer. And so, like, Mary Jane's fixing dinner. First of all, can we acknowledge how amazing it is that this even got written? Because it is utterly impossible to tell any kind of interesting or compelling story when Spider-Man is married to Mary Jane. I mean, how? It's amazing that this even got written, because how can you write around such a horrendous creative roadblock?
You sound like you're a little sarcastic there.
Just a little bit. I think somebody just said with Marvel, like, "Oh yeah, no, they can't get married. They could date again, but they
can't get married."
It's like, yeah, because, you know, only 20 some years of comics and they were all garbage, clearly, because you just can't tell a story about people being married. Anyway, the point is, Peter, according to this, I didn't realize this, but I guess he goes commando in the Spidey costume because everything's in the hallway, and Mary Jane goes, "This trail of clothing on the floor can only mean one of two things. Either you're really happy to see me or you're swinging out of the skylight."
Oh, yes. I remember that panel now. Oh, goodness.
So, yeah, and I was like, huh. And so what was the comics code there for? To keep people from saying don't do drugs or using the word fart? Oh, yeah, the relatable superhero moments. So Spider-Man goes to Avengers Mansion, goes, "Hey, Cap, I'm a reserve Avenger now. Moon Knight was a West Coast Avenger. Can you help me get in touch with him?" And Cap's like, "You could just use your ID card."
Convenient.
I first got into fantasy football and fantasy basketball when I was in junior high, before you could play it for free online and stuff like that. And so I kept the stats myself, and I used the spreadsheet program. And it wasn't until I got to college that I realized the spreadsheet would have done the math for me. Typed the numbers in and did the math myself. And so I kind of felt like that, you know, call Moon Knight on your ID card. And Spider-Man's like, "Oh, okay." Even that, Spider-Man's like, "Hey, I've got to get a hold of Moon Knight." It's actually kind of easy, Pete. So, yeah, in 355, we get Spider-Man referring to the Punisher as Punny Bunny.
Oh, Lord.
Which doesn't have the same ring to it as the Pun Fisher from Spider-Ham's universe.
True.
And then Night Thrasher and Frank are kind of kindred spirits, and they're complaining about Spider-Man. Spider-Man remarks, "Insults from one guy whose name sounds like he wants to spank people," which Peter David actually did a whole thing of in Marvel Mangaverse. That Punisher was a private school principal who paddled villains.
Oh, my gosh.
Like anybody with Peter David, I would have had the same reaction, but somehow it worked. And then he says, "And from another whose moniker makes it sound like he's having naughty nighttime dreams."
Night Thrasher.
Yeah, I'm like, man, Spidey, I don't know.
He was pushing. He was reaching a lot in many of these conversations.
There's a real, I was going to say, there's a real art to making Spider-Man a funny character. It's not as easy as people think. And this is a good example.
Can't be on all the time. I know you guys think I'm pretty hilarious, but every once in a while I have a joke that falls flat. So I know, but it happens. So maybe Spider-Man doesn't land the joke every time. He has the proportional speed and strength of a spider, but maybe he also sometimes has the proportional sense of humor of a spider.
I almost sent one last night. I got tired of bugging you guys, but there was one that he said, and I was like, this is Evan's book. Like, this is definitive Evan Bevins dialogue here for some reason.
Now I want to know what that one was.
I have to remember what it was. I guarantee you, I think it was in the latter half of it. And I was
Darkhawk was cracking some puns in that first issue. And I was like,
they were rough.
Like, did he do this in his book? Or is this like one of the properties of the body he's switching with? Like, it's a Catskills comic from space or something?
This is all Milgrom, baby.
That's a great question that actually crossed my mind. I was like, is this what Powell is sounding like over there? Me and Chris have read some Darkhawk books together, and I don't remember him. I mean, he's definitely a kid. So every once in a while, he might have said something that might have been funny, but I don't remember being this bad.
Yeah, he's really doing like bad Spider-Man puns.
But I will say, for all the villains screwing up, the heroes screwing up, and some of the jokes not landing, like that moment where even though I was kind of like, oh yeah, Punisher's so sick, he's recounting his origin. But I mean, come on. If there's one thing we're used to in comics, it's awkward expositional dialogue just being passed off as the most natural thing in the world. But there is that moment where Spider-Man's like, oh man, this guy really has had it rough. You know, and I know he's a murderer, but that was kind of cool.
The Punisher is here pretty much throughout the 6 issues. This was an era when it was acceptable to have what is essentially a mass murderer teaming up with the superheroes. Like now, anytime Punisher shows up, you expect the hero.
They're going to try and bring him in.
Like, I'm going to let you help with this because I need the help, and then I'm going to make sure you're pay for your crimes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were definitely some moments where the Punisher's hurt, and they're like, okay, Frank, you rest up. And I'm like, this is a great time to drop him off to the cops.
Yeah, he gets, like, in the first couple issues, really the only time you see him is when he's killing a drug dealer. That's it. Their paths end up crossing towards the end of it.
In his defense, he was going to let that guy go.
He drew down on him, and he knew it, and he shot him. So, yeah, that's a good point.
That's like a Raylan Givens move there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to shoot you unless you draw on me. Yeah.
But I do miss the era when Punisher can team up with other superheroes, and it's not a constant tension and stuff.
I agree. All right, panel time. So I've already told you we're going to do all 3. And so we'll go around for 353, 354, and then 355. So I've already told my first one for 353. Evan, you got the next one.
Okay, mine is on page 11 where Midnight breaks Thunderball out of jail and Darkhawk crashes into him and they're all falling and fighting and challenging each other. Thunderball realizes, hey, without my powers, I might not walk away from this one.
All right, that's a good one.
Well, look, now, I'm sorry, but I have to point. Good panel, but in this panel, we have one of Darkhawk's worst lines. When
we're talking about the visuals, Chris, not the dialogue.
I know, but Midnight telling him his name.
Oh, yeah.
And, call me Midnight. And Darkhawk says, Midnight, eh? Well, don't have a stroke. But also, as the doctor...
I had that line. I couldn't remember why I had it in there. And I, of all people, missed the pun the second time around when I was looking at my notes. I'm like, what does that even mean? I got it when I read it, but then I was looking at my notes and I'm like, why did I even write that down? That makes no sense.
Yes, Thunderball is falling, his inner monologue or his thought bubble. I'm falling and I may not be able to get up.
Oh, man, I didn't even catch that.
From the era as well. In a battle.
Wow.
Okay, but say what you will, that's a better line than Midnight. Well, don't have a stroke.
I'm not going to challenge that.
That panel got deep. Dang, that was great. All right. Chris, you got one?
I think it's page 7. It's going to be during the retelling of Darkhawk's story. This should come as no surprise, guys.
I knew it was going to. I could tell. I knew where it was going.
5, we have the reveal of Darkhawk with the dark lighting behind him and the smoke coming up from his feet, looking super powerful. I would like a poster of that. This is early Bagley, but he's already pretty refined. To me, he's the ultimate Spider-Man artist, and
well, yeah, he was with Bendis.
Well, all right. He's the definitive Spider-Man artist for me, and kind of just like definitive Marvel superhero. He kind of can do everybody. He always looks like all of his interpretations of the characters are always really solid. So yeah, he's awesome.
Not so much for the vision. Not really solid. Stuff kind of passes through.
Oh, come on, dude. Al Milgrom is now writing Evan Bevins.
Kitty pride. Continue.
So anyway, okay. So we got around to that was the first issue.
Yeah, let's do our panels for 353.
All right, 354 is next. Evan, I'll let you go first.
I'm going to take the one that probably both you guys picked. It's page 2 with the Spidey and Darkhawk fastball special cover.
I almost chose it, but I found something that speaks to me a little bit more.
I think I know what you got.
That's a good one, though. Yeah, because, that's...
You can tell they haven't practiced this very much.
That's right. Like, what are you going to do? I'll just pick you up and throw you. Okay.
I saw Wolverine and Colossus do this once. It was amazing. Actually, it was uncanny. But
Oh, goodness. Yeah. I'm taking the second one, and that's Punisher going through a skylight. There was a moment, if I remember correctly, Chris, where we were making it during the Midnight Suns event where we were picking nothing but panels where people were going through windows.
It happened a lot.
we had it in the Darkhawk Sleepwalker crossover, too.
Yes, we did. So I'm doing it here again. Frank Castle dropping with 2 submachine guns in his hand, just unloading on. And I believe he actually starts his Al Milgrom. Don't you punks realize that illegal drugs are hazardous to your health? It's a good message. All right, Chris, you've got the third panel here. What's your?
I don't know what he's picking.
No, I think I might be throwing a curveball. I'm on the last page, middle panel on the top, second panel on the last page, where Midnight is using his electric surge on Nova to knock him out. He's got his palm over Nova's face and blasting him with electricity. Electro bolt to disrupt the nervous system.
Nice.
Go with that.
This is the guy who will one day save the entire galaxy from the hordes of Ultron and Annihilus.
Hey, we get reference to he doesn't know how powerful he is yet.
That's true. Development. Right. I thought you were going to take page 6 where Spidey is reflected on Darkhawk's mask.
That one is very cool.
All right, then, Chris, 355. What's your panel there?
I think this is page 11, and it's the panel 6. It's the panel where Spider-Man is getting hit upside the head by the giant gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yep.
From Grasp.
That's a good one. Grasp. That's a cool looking suit of armor.
You got to hand it to him.
Oh my God.
There we go.
I think my
Chris, are you still there?
Okay, Evan, you got the second one there, and I'll go last. What's your?
Let's see. Mine is page 6. Punisher's like, well, hey, they didn't know I was here, and then they realize they're surrounded. All the secret Empire goons are coming out of the woodwork.
Page 6.
Yeah, top half.
Gotcha. Well, mine's right before that, and that's where it's Spider-Man, Moon Knight, and Night Thrasher landing on the top of that building. It's all 3 of them in this dynamic pose as they're getting ready to land. And, of course, Punisher is like, oh, great. There goes my cover. All right. Well, very good. We got through it. I'm ready to rock and roll. We'll get into the synopsis of the next 3, and then we'll blast through our notes and panels, and let's take a look. You guys ready?
Yep.
Ready.
All right, here we go. Amazing Spider-Man 356 continues the fast-paced action of Spider-Man, Moon Knight, Night Thrasher, and the Punisher track the secret empire to their Manhattan base. Meanwhile, Nova is being brutally experimented on. Night Thrasher manages to pick up a signal from Nova's communicator, leading the heroes to storm the secret empire's headquarters hidden beneath a tailor shop. As they carve through the defenders, internal chaos among the villains give them an edge. Meanwhile, Nurse Lynn Church secretly frees Midnight from the Empire's control, allowing him to betray his handlers and demand leadership. A brutal showdown with Midnight erupts, forcing the heroes into a desperate fight to stop their former ally. But ultimately, Midnight and the surviving Empire members escape on a hidden rocket, with Punisher secretly stowing away. In Amazing Spider-Man 357, Spider-Man, Moon Knight, and Night Thrasher regroup, frustrated by their inability to stop the Empire's escape. Meanwhile, aboard the Empire ship, Punisher works undercover to sabotage them from within, while Midnight dreams of building a nation of cybernetic warriors. The heroes temporarily separate, gathering strength and preparing for the next move. Gathering strength.
Yeah. That's what the kids are calling it these days.
Meanwhile, Nova, still a captive, fights back with Punisher's secret assistance, causing chaos inside the Empire's new base. As Nova regains his freedom and the alarm blares, Moon Knight, Spider-Man, and Night Thrasher race toward the signal. Joined by Darkhawk, the reunited heroes crash the Empire stronghold, launching into an all-out brawl against Midnight, Thunderball, and the secret Empire's forces. The action reaches a fever pitch in Amazing Spider-Man number 358 as Spider-Man, Darkhawk, Moon Knight, Nova, Night Thrasher, and the Punisher face overwhelming odds in a massive, chaotic battle. Thunderball, now armored and wielding an energized wrecking ball, joins the fray just as the Seekers, welcome back, mercenary villains storm in to make things even worse. Amid the brutal combat, Lynn Church is revealed to be a cybernetic agent with her own ambitions to rule the secret empire. Betrayed and furious, Midnight lashes out and the battle turns increasingly personal. The heroes fight fiercely, but Lynn and Midnight's destructive rage threatens to bring down the entire base around them. In the final clash, betrayal and rage tear the secret empire apart from within. And Midnight, realizing the depth of his manipulation and transformation, goes berserk, bringing the base crashing down. As the dust clears, the heroes survive but find little comfort in their victory. Midnight and Lynn Church are presumed dead, buried beneath the rubble, while Thunderball narrowly escaped, but is now in the hero's custody. The secret empire is crippled, but the cost is heavy, especially for Moon Knight, who mourns Jeff Wild's fall from grace. Though victory was achieved, it came at a steep emotional price, ending the saga on a bitter, sweet note. There we go. That is finishing out the round robin. Let's try that again. What's it called again? It is the
round robin. Sidekick's Revenge.
Sidekick's Revenge. All right. I'm going to blast through them. Here's my notes. Note number 1. Did you just send me a Midnight song by the Monkees?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
You do all the production stuff. I'm just saying. Throwing it out there.
Good.
Thanks.
Hey, who doesn't love the Monkees?
I can tell you right now, if I don't get copyright struck on it, I'm going to call them and say, could you please copyright strike me on this? I'm not slamming the Monkees. I mean, the Monkees are all right. They're the Monkees.
People hear about that, you're going to start getting the funniest looks from everyone you meet.
Oh, boy.
Whenever you're walking down the street, Weren't you going to share some notes or something?
Going from that to Spider-Man's shadow joke, which is... I think this is, I don't know. What audience are you writing for, Al? I understand. You started in 1973. You started in 1973. In 1991, Chris, you might know this one off the top of your head. When is Alec Baldwin portraying the Shadow?
It was later. It was probably like 93, I think.
So this isn't on...
No one knows this reference.
No. How does it go? The Shadow knows? So the joke goes as such. We'll get to Midnight soon enough, but right now I'm more worried about Lamont Cranston. Okay. The Shadow. And he's pointing at their shadows on the wall, I assume coming their way. All right. Night Thrasher, who knows better. He knows better. And he kind of points it out a little bit. You know those old time radio dramas? Man, why is Pete even listening to these things?
Who raised him, Jesse? Who raised Peter Parker?
I will step back and say you have a very good point. You have a very good point. Those old time radio dramas may have been popular once, but if they were on the air today, as he tosses grenades in the air, he says they'd just bomb. Night Thrasher. All right. So
you're just mad that we got 6 issues and not a single psych.
Not a single. You know what? Or not. Right. Exactly. Chris knows we didn't get a not reference. 90s not references and no psych.
Wayne's World hadn't taken off yet, I guess.
Al Milgrom does not own a TV.
Yeah, he's listening to Shadow.
He's listening to his radio, his AM radio. He doesn't own that. FM is not on there.
Movies and...
So that scene would have been fine to you if Night Thrasher had said, "Oh, what an up-to-date reference, Spidey." Not.
Okay, you're forgiven. Al Milgrom, welcome back into the good graces. All right, it's cool to see Midnight's free from control. He definitely takes his revenge on the Empire members. I think it's number 7 who has that little remote in his hand. He grabs that remote and crushes it. That's pretty cool.
And his hand.
Yeah, he messes his up.
His head.
I was going to say, there is blood on the wall. Something bad happened to this guy.
It is never a good sign when someone's head says splock.
Right. Al Milgrom could stand to show and not tell sometimes. This is pretty dense. If you're just looking at the amount of words, there are a lot here. I'm done criticizing Al Milgrom because he's a phenomenal creator, but that's it. That's my final one. You guys can go ahead and knock him. The rest, I'm not even going to jump in. I'm not even going to laugh. Opening the next issue with a bagel with Nova. A bagel with Nova.
I looked that up. It's a thing.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me what it is.
I don't know what this means. I've never known.
Well, it's a type of bagel. Let's see. The Einstein Brothers Bagels, their website has a Nova Lox brunch special.
Nova Lox.
It's the perfect catch. Cold smoked salmon, red onions, capers, tomatoes, and plain cream cheese schmear on a fresh baked plain bagel.
Thank goodness you looked this up. I looked up a bagel with Nova, and what ended up coming up was this issue.
5 years ago on Reddit, Nova locks on everything bagel with scallion, shallot, and caper cream cheese. So apparently it's like a bagel with lox and some seafood. I Googled it yesterday. I had no idea. Well, a bagel with Nova? What the?
Unless it's a bagel bite, I'm not interested.
Right. Okay. All right. Moon Knight, Spidey, and Night Thrasher all take a break. Spidey and Moon Knight meet up with their significant others. My gosh. This was some suggestive dialogue for sure. All right. Our heroes finally all show up.
I thought, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if Night Thrasher and Silhouette were that close, but when Silhouette comes in, Night Thrasher's boxing has a shirt off. I was like, oh, is this where they took their relationship to the next level?
Getting all our heroes together was pretty cool. Was it our final issue where we get the tri-gatefold cover?
Oh, yeah.
That is awesome.
Well, you're not going to do a tri-gatefold cover on part 5.
Didn't know.
This is amateur hour?
Actually, did I pick this as one of my... No, I didn't. I thought I would have picked this as one of my panels. But anyway, Punisher with the butt of a knife to take out the brittle armor.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. He just hits... Was it Sonic's armor that got frozen, and he just takes the butt of his knife and just taps it, and it all shatters? That was pretty cool. Lynn the Cyborg, I wasn't expecting that for some reason. She had been voluntarily having her own body modified after they would experiment on Jeff's. I wasn't expecting it. Interesting twist, I guess. Thunderball, after the collapse of things, like he comes out of that thing with what looks to be both of their arms, and like he used it to like get, make his way out of the wreckage. Interesting.
And Jesse, what was the title of that issue?
Tell me.
Out on a Limb.
Oh,
wow. I can't even, because I said I wasn't going to do it earlier. How am I not?
What's the mock?
I'm sure that you were just like, I've got to get this issue bagged and boarded immediately.
Hey, man. I mean, we all like collecting. There's no harm in trying, okay?
Oh, did you say no harm in trying? Gosh.
But Chris, are you there?
Hang it in.
I'm done. I am done. That is all my notes, because my last note was, why was this called Round Robin? We already talked about that. So I'm going to I think I threw it to Chris first last time. So Evan,
you can let Chris go if you're tired of hearing from me.
I'll let you go, Evan. Get it out of your system.
I like the moment in 356 where they're like, how are we going to find Nova? And Night Thrasher's like, maybe we can try our helmet communicators. And they're like, what now? Like, yeah, let's do that one. I did like, even though this is a 6-part story and we're reading them all one after the other, there was plenty of exposition in there so that if somebody did just start with 356, they could pretty much grasp what was going on. Maybe they wouldn't know it was gross incompetence on the part of the heroes and the villains, but they'd know where they were and they could pick up the story from there.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. Back in the 90s, the formula was, let's catch everybody up at least on a page or two.
They should. Every issue could be somebody's first
issue.
So I'm not a Punisher scholar, as you know, but we did get the Punisher sneaking in, dressing up as one of the member of the Secret Empire, and then passing out in a supply closet.
Him trying to make excuses for what he was doing was pretty funny. Like he just, he would, I'm heading that way. Don't worry, I got a meeting. I was just checking on this and see what was going on.
I was in the battle with those super characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got even Frank was cracking wise a few times in this. Oh, yeah. When Midnight's like, yeah, okay, I'm in charge now. And the Punisher goes, don't let this metal mockery of a man usurp our power. Which is fantastic comic book dialogue. I love it. I don't see Frank Castle saying that, but
he's in character. He's got a.
Well, that you know what? That's true. You're right. I take that back. Frank was selling it. He was talking like a melodramatic villain. Good note.
The Secret Empire fighting amongst themselves for leadership and all that stuff. That was a good angle to bring in to help Frank out and to set up Midnight and Lynn.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I never read anything with Secret Empire in it. So this dysfunctional organization was, you're sitting there, when you look at these guys, they all have numbers on themselves. They all look the same.
They've got kind of Vader type.
Yeah.
Mask, helmet, voice.
See, I was thinking mask. M-A-S-K,
I got it.
And then we have the moment after the romantic interludes where Peter's got has figured out how to work his Avengers communicator card and Moon Knight gets to hear some of their personal conversation.
That was pretty funny because he's like, I'm going to have to teach him that you need to learn how to turn your stuff off before you start talking after we finish our conversation. That sounds like a Zoom call gone bad.
Yeah. And then in 358, we have the historic meeting of future teammates, Darkhawk and Night Thrasher.
Mm-hmm.
New Warriors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Darkhawk, right about the time.
I don't know if he was ever an official member, but he showed up in a lot of New Warriors comics.
Okay.
Look, I'm pretty sure at least one of his HeroClix figures has the New Warriors keyword, so I don't know how much more official you can get than that.
It's true.
Another wisecrack that didn't quite land. When Sonic comes back, Spider-Man jumps on him. Sonic's going after the Punisher again. Spider-Man says, "Turn him loose, you big noise." But I mean, they've been fighting these guys across the... Like I said, Spider-Man can't have the perfect quip every time.
Spider-Man can't call anybody by their name. He calls Moon Knight Mooney. Punisher is Pun Bunny.
Names. Jesse, it's hard to do it when he's got his spider sense going off all the time.
Mm-hmm. He's horrible with names.
Now, one thing I'll say about this is while I did kind of find it interesting that they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to experiment on this Midnight guy and we can get all these cyborgs and everything. Even at this point in the Marvel Universe, is a cyborg really that cutting edge technology? I guess it depends on the story you're trying to tell. Last year, Marvel did this big blood hunt crossover and it's like vampires are taking over the world. Really? In the Marvel Universe, I'm supposed to believe that Thor's going to sweat a vampire? Or even a bunch of vampires. I mean, the story worked. They made the vampires a threat, but now they're doing this big crossover with Godzilla versus the Marvel Universe, and I'm like, it's not like there aren't a lot of kaiju. What was that?
So they've already taken on Fin Fang Foom.
Well, and the original canonical Marvel Godzilla got killed by Archangel in an issue of Uncanny X-Men.
Oh wow!
So I love Godzilla, and that Fantastic Four versus Godzilla one shot that Ryan North wrote. Oh my gosh, that is good comics.
Good stuff.
I'm just saying. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the Hulk one's weird, but the Fantastic Four one is. Oh man.
This was. Did it take place back in the 60s?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember hearing a bit about it. I haven't read it, but I've heard stuff.
It's so good. But anyway, my point is, even though I like Godzilla, I like Marvel, but I'm like, I don't know. So again, with this one, I'm like, ooh, cyborgs. I mean, we've got a lot of cyborgs, and Midnight, not the best test subject. I mean, I feel like rough life.
Yeah, I think they're cashing in on the craze, like Chris was talking about earlier, because we are just outside of man. Metal skulls are just running rampant through comics at this point, like half skulls that are metal and stuff, all because I liken all this stuff back to Terminator, because Terminator looks so freaking cool.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. I'm not sure that the Secret Empire is going to tip the balance of villainous power in the Marvel Universe with some sort of cyber force, if you will.
I like the scene where Thunderball, I forget the doctor, the real name or whatever, but
Elliot Franklin.
They bring in Dr. Franklin and they're like, hey, we want to get some superpowered people and turn them into cyborgs. And he's like, well, I mean, we can maybe do that, but they may be less powerful if we're taking, we may be downgrading them if I turn them into cyborgs.
Again, these are not a well-oiled machine. These plans, and like I said, that's what I like about it. They're very human heroes and villains in this.
Yeah. And Franklin is also kind of angling for an opportunity to take over the Secret Empire points too. Yeah, he's always the member of the Wrecking Crew that stands out to me, because I met the Wrecking Crew in an issue of Damage Control during Acts of Vengeance. And Thunderball was secretly helping them because he was friends with somebody in the Damage Control group. He was always the breakout of the Wrecking Crew for me. But he's actually a genius mad scientist. I think the first time I saw the entire Wrecking Crew was in Thunderbolts #1, or one of the early issues. I'm not 100% sure if it was #1, but yeah. Okay, but those are all my notes. So
okay, all right, Chris, you got the floor, man.
I'll just focus more on part 4. I do like the page where they're basically like, hey, there's a lot of action going on, so we're just going to shut up and let you guys enjoy it for a few. And there's a page of just them beating up random Secret Empire goons. And I mean, they've got to have 500,000 soldiers.
Right, dude.
I mean, every issue, it's Night Thrasher and Moon Knight and Spider-Man clobbering, random Secret Empire soldiers. And then there's always more around the next corner.
And I didn't see, but I mean, does every single one of them have Roman numerals on their chest?
No, that's only the leaders.
All right.
Yeah, they got like a council of.
I was thinking you got soldier number 1,553. And it's all written in Roman numerals on his
Cover me,
chest.
CXLVII.
You guys have made some hay about the innuendo. The main one is you weren't complaining about the Spidey action you were just getting.
Yes.
I think that it's a little tamer than you guys make it out to be. There were a lot of other comics in this era where they would make sexual references and stuff, but this is such a toned down, like there's very little interaction with characters that aren't in masks. Bagley still got kind of a cartoony style almost, so I think it just stands out more.
Well,
me, anyway.
I don't think I would have noticed it if I was reading it when I was 11.
Yeah.
I don't think he even finishes the sentence. I think he says, you weren't complaining about that spider action, and then he was cut off, and Mary Jane's like, you better watch it. Which, I would have never caught it back then.
Moon Knight heard it all.
As adults, when you're going back and looking at this thing, it's easy to pick stuff out like that. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, the final battle, it's pretty much just a big Royal Rumble. The cyborgs, what are the Seekers and Thunderball against all the combined heroes, and I really like Thunderball's new costume, which I think only ever appeared in these two comics, these two issues.
Oh, really?
It pretty much gets wrecked in this. And the next
he got his powers back.
Eventually, the Wrecking Crew get their magic powers, I guess. They're Asgardian powers of some kind, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool action in this finale. Bagley kind of going ham.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned the Frank's, breaking open the ice and kicking he's got his socks and boxers on. That's all on it, because that's who gets it.
Yeah.
That's all he needs under the armor. But there's a lot of really cool sequences of just cool art. When we finally see Lynn unmasked, she rips her flesh face off, and she's almost entirely robotic at this point. Jeff kind of doesn't see. Not only does he see her as almost like a monster, because he was forced into this position and she designed it for herself, but also she betrays him by hey, the Secret Empire can't control you anymore, but I made sure that I still could. And then there's a cool moment where Thunderball tries to take over, and Lynn is just you ain't got no chance, man. Rips that arm off, which that's a kind of, I said I like the Thunderball design. It is weird that he purposely doesn't have one hand free. It's just the ball.
Yeah. It's
like, if you guys know Art Jemerson, the boxer in the very first UFC event that went out with one boxing glove on.
What?
The initial, very first UFC, it was all these different.
It was all sorts from all over, if I remember correctly.
Like a sumo wrestler, a boxer, a jiu-jitsu guy, and the boxer came out with one boxing glove on and one hand free, because he knew he'd have to do some grappling and stuff. And
oh, wow. That's funny.
He was quickly defeated.
I still have an advantage on Balrog.
I was going to say, this is like Street Fighter stuff. This is what it reminds me of. It's messed up.
But that's pretty much all I got. I really like this story still, even though there's some warts you can point out. Mostly dialogue stuff, I think. But still, it's a really fun comic. There's almost like a spiritual sequel, sort of, when Eric Larson does Revenge of the Sinister Six, maybe a year after this, which has got Sleepwalker, Ghost Rider, Fantastic Four, Hulk. Yeah, a lot of Marvel characters are in those 6 issues as well. Now, at this point, the Marvel universe is too interconnected, I think. You don't get enough of the individual characters getting their own stories and stuff.
I'm not reading enough recent comics to make a comment on really how that is, but what I have read, I feel like it's all events. It's Infinity Gauntlet again and again and again. Everybody's coming together for this event.
Well, even in Spider-Man recently, when Zeb Wells had a big crossover called Gang War, even with the requisite tie-ins and limited series, in the main one, it was Spider-Man, Elektra, Luke Cage, She-Hulk, and a couple others taking on all these gangs that were fighting for power in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you mention it, that's kind of reminiscent of this, because it's just this kind of loose conglomeration of heroes rolling from one fight to the next.
But yeah, it did seem special at the time. Like I said, this was one of the first multi-part stories I ever read because I was just first getting into comics then.
Imagine this being one of your first comics you picked up and you're like, who are all these characters? My gosh, this guy looks awesome. Night Thrasher, aside from Punisher, there's some really cool looks. Moon Knight's got a great look in this. Night Thrasher, I love his look. Spider-Man's, it's Bagley on Spider-Man. It's cool to see the Punisher in here. Some of these characters look freaking awesome. All right, let's get into panels. It's panel time. We have issue 356 is what we'll do first. I'll go last. So, Evan, you go first on 356.
Okay, 356. I am looking at page 16. Near the bottom, it's when the number 7 is trying to press the button to control Midnight, and they're on the last panel on the page. He's like, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And just even though that mask covers up their features, the eyes, like he knows that he is in deep trouble here.
Yes, he is. All right, I'll go next. And I am not going to be able to give you a page number, but I can tell you it's near the middle when they all three, Night Thrasher, Spider-Man, and Moon Knight, break glass into the Taylor's building.
Yeah.
They are coming in there. We got Crash, Plinkle, and Splash on the, as for the onomatopoeia. Is that what it is, Evan? Is that the right word?
I think so.
Okay. All right. They're crashing in there. And of course, they're making an entrance. So there is my panel.
That's also a law firm that primarily handles defenestration cases. Crash, Plinkle, and Skash.
Chris Armstrong, what's your panel?
Something I wanted to mention earlier and I kind of forgot. What's up with Moon Knight's triple nunchuck?
I don't know, but I like it. I've never seen him with it. I never paid attention to where he's beating somebody with it, but I love the look of it.
Yeah,
go ahead, Chris. I'd like to hear your argument against it.
I have none. I was just curious if that's a real thing or something they designed for Moon Knight.
Fellow Chucker, huh?
So I'm going to go, I think we're looking at page 18, the first panel, and it's going to be Moon Knight and Night Thrasher both going at midnight, hitting him one with the nunchuck and one with his Night Thrasher with his, I guess it's kind of a billy club type thing.
Yeah, they're laying it into him, trying to take him down. All right. Okay. Next up is going to be issue 357. And I mentioned this earlier. This is the one panel that I picked specifically because of the words describing the sound effects. And that is Nova breaking loose from his restraints. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but Kirby Crackle is a thing. And one of those things looks exactly like what Kirby Crackle would remind you of with the dots and stuff like that, especially when you're playing Marvel Snap. They actually have an effect to a card that is called Crackle. These black dots that are kind of emanating the energy that is coming off of Nova is going wild here. I'm taking Nova getting away from his restraints. Evan, you got the second panel.
Well, I didn't even realize this was a tradition here, but mine's on page 18 with Spider-Man crashing through a skylight.
I think
like that's the one I marked, and Midnight says, Spider-Man again? Like, clearly he didn't check what issue he was in.
No, he did not.
But yeah, that's a cool entrance by Spider-Man.
I'll agree.
And a very 90s entrance, apparently.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, Chris.
Man, I'm really struggling not to pick another Darkhawk panel because he made his return here.
And there's nothing wrong with appreciating Darkhawk.
Now, I'm actually going to go with page 18, panel 4, which is Punisher and Nova together. We see Punisher jumping out, guns blazing, and Nova charging forward. Nova flies so fast, you can't even see his legs. It's all just a streak. He's still able to have a conversation with Frank at the air and fly right next to him. But hey, it's comics.
That's right. Physics mean nothing here.
I mean, if Spidey and Darkhawk can work out that whole fastball special faster than Spidey can shoot a web, then.
Right. All right, Chris, I'll give you the first pick here at 358.
Oh, man. It's tempting to go for that 2-page spread. Yeah, I'm going to go with the first panel on page 4 with Darkhawk unleashing a force blast at Thunderball, and we've also got in the background Night Thrasher knocking around one of the bad guys.
All right. Good pick. I'll go second. I am absolutely picking Lynn Church ripping her own face off.
Well, that's a good one.
Oh, dude. I just remember she just reaches up there and peels all the skin straight off of her face. And like everybody's like, what is going on? It is frightening. Yes. So yeah, I like that one. It's pretty freaky. All right, Evan, what do you got, man?
Let's see. Mine is on page 7. It's actually a bigger panel than I thought. Sonic's armor freezing up, and you can see his eyes and him realizing, oh, yeah, Punisher's coming at me with a knife. I mean, there's a great shot of Spider-Man clocking midnight behind him, but just the look on that guy's face, he's like, oh, this is not good. Here comes the guy I almost killed.
Dude, where he's reasoning out, if he goes for the eye slits, I am in trouble. Like he knows that Punisher may just go and stab him straight in the eye. We did pick this apart a lot with Al and his dialogue here. I understand he's an inker, not commonly known for writing issues. That's fine. He's allowed to have his moment in the sun, and he did. He had a great time with these superheroes taking on a large cadre of villains. As far as, you know, there was a large organization of villains. I still had a fun time. I'd seen these issues plenty of times. I'm like, oh man, you know, Punisher showing up in a Spidey book, not all that rare, but still when he does show up, usually it's an event. And not only that, we got Night Thrasher in this thing. Nova, what the heck is Nova and the Punisher doing together? You know, these mixed bag of heroes being thrown together was really what made this story appealing. How are they all going to work together? How are things going to shake down? What kind of interaction is Frank going to have with Night Thrasher, which they do have, especially at the end when the cops are coming and Night Thrasher's like, hey man, I just picked up scanner frequency. They're coming. You might want to get out of here. All that stuff was pretty cool. Aside from what we had and picked apart with the dialogue, it's a story that I've been wanting to read, and I'm glad I had the chance to read it. That's my final thoughts. Chris, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I love this story. And, you know, again, the Al's Milgrom, I think he does a good job with the story overall. Some of the dialogue is hokey and cheesy, and there's stuff that you can pick apart, like apparently Secret Empire has 147,000 soldiers running around New York City and hidden bases all over the place. It's comics, and it's an era of comics that were more forgiving to the fantastical. It's a really fun superhero story with a lot of cool characters and fun action. And Bagley was not at his peak yet. He had probably only been around for a couple of years at this point, but he would kind of become a big star on Amazing Spider-Man over the next few years and develop into one of the best artists, as far as I'm concerned. I love Bagley. Really fun comic.
Oh, yeah, it was a blast. I had fun with some of the dialogue, but overall, I enjoyed it. Like I said, the story itself, at first, it seemed a little haphazard, but honestly, like I said, one of my favorite parts was that the heroes, the villains, these plans aren't working out and they're just winging it. It's not something where everybody's planned it out 17 steps ahead. And it's just a lot of fun, great action. Just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we threw these characters together? I mean, I don't know what more you can ask for.
Evan Bevins, plugs, man, go.
Asterisk51.blogspot.com. If you like the way I think about comics but are annoyed by the sound of my voice, it's all print on there. I go through Offbeat Comics, a much deeper dive on Spider-Man and Beyonder, going to the restroom on there, and a lot of other stuff. Secret Defenders, NFL Super Pro, Just Imagine Stan Lee creating the DC Universe. So check that out.
Yep, and the hashtag JSApril as well. I go to the Twitters and punch that in there. Chris, tell them all about it.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RoadMan34. I also have a couple of podcasts I do with my buddy AJ. One called Small Screeners, where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. We have another movie podcast called Because Movies, where we can kind of just talk about whatever we want movie-wise. So can check those out on your podcatcher of choice.
Love it. All right, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting out of here. That over there is Evan Bevins. I'm Jesse Starcher, and down there is Chris Armstrong. We will be talking to you soon. Chris Armstrong, send him out with something.
A bagel with Nova?
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.